Well, I would disagree with that, and in some ways, one can't argue with opinions that take for their premise an emotional sort of evaluation. The fact is, the church has been singing hymns almost throughout its entire history, and in many ways throughout its entire history, even in the Old Testament. The character of hymns changes to some extent, especially with regard to music. There's a growth and development to musical forms, and one can even use the word styles, I suppose. When the music is functioning as a servant, as a handmaiden to the Word of God, that's fine. But to say that hymns no longer communicate is really to misunderstand hymnody to begin with. Lutherans historically have understood that hymns are not simply about the Word of God, and they're not simply a response to the Word of God, but hymns are another vehicle of the Word of God. In fact, in the course of Lutheran history, pastors have on occasion preached on the text of hymns because they understood the hymns to be a confession, a proclamation of the Word of God, and therefore a Word of God. Well, if hymns are a Word of God, of course they continue to communicate. Good hymns that properly divide the law and gospel and focus on Christ serve a purpose because the Word itself is living and active. The Spirit of God breathes in it and through it, and Christ is present in it, and people are still called to faith and to the forgiveness of sins through hymns. The special power and beauty of hymns, and this was something that Luther recognized, and it became one of the most significant contributions not only of Luther himself but of the Lutheran Church, is that music, which is also a gift of God and part of His creation, is a particularly powerful and beautiful way of confessing and extolling and serving and supporting the Word of God. When you take the Word of God and render it poetically in a good hymn text and set it to music that is appropriate to the text and conveys the text with grace and beauty, that is a wonderful combination that certainly does continue to speak to people now and communicate to people now. I think people that disparage hymns haven't really given decent hymnody a try. They're scared off by it. They're put off for whatever reason. In my own congregation, what I have found, and I see this especially in the children, but I see it in the adults as well, is that when they have learned good hymns, they're not only willing to sing them, they not only learn from them, but they love them. Last month I was out of the country actually for a while, and my youth group, on its own initiative, begged the organist to come over on a Wednesday evening and have a hymn sing. And they finally had to stop because the organist got tired and said, "Look, we got to call it a night." And the hymns that the youth were asking for, they weren't being prompted. They weren't having their arms twisted. The hymns they were asking for were the historic Lutheran chorales and the ancient Latin hymns, the good, solid texts, the hymns that are 8 verses or 10 verses long that adults sometimes say, these are too hard or these are too, whatever. The youth respond to them, and the little children, too. I mean, it is a wonderful thing to me when I hear my own little children or the children of my congregation, who are just about as dear to me as my own, when I hear them singing hymns. And in my congregation over the last number of years, we have learned some hymns that some of the older folks didn't really know before. And I got to give my people credit for really, they're troopers when it comes to learning new hymns. Well, they have to be to put up with me, but they have noticed that when we sing some of these hymns, the children sing their little hearts out. I mean, they love these hymns, and it's obvious in their faces and in their voices. So that to me says hymns still communicate, they still serve a purpose, and they're still well received.